If you build a Webflow site with AI Site Builder and then you open Style Guide and you see it's powered by FlowKit, but you have no idea what the FlowKit, this video is for you. In this video, I'm going to cover what FlowKit is and how to use it on your AI-generated sites in Webflow. But first, let's generate a site in Webflow. I'm on webflow.com and I'm going to just click AI Site Builder. And because I have my already account open, so this is what I get. I'm not going to put any prompts, I'm just going to use one of the suggested prompts. And we simply click button create, and this is going to create 4 pages with sitemap and with all the different sections. And we can add more sections. Let's add one gallery section. Let's add just few more feature sections. And I also want to add testimonial section. Good. I don't even need other pages for the demo, but we're going to build them anyway. Hit generate and we just wait for the site guide will be generated for us. Okay, it's getting ready. Sweet, the site is generated and we have 4 pages here. So you can zoom in, zoom out, you can look through the sections that have been generated. There is one bento grid, which I wanted to have. Even 2 we have. Nice. There is a couple of sections that I need for this presentation and it's all looking good. Let's open one of the pages. And one thing that I always like to do is to work on typography first. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to click typography here and I want to change size of the typography to something more smaller option like medium or small. Let's check, this is small and this is medium. I think medium is working good and the site is coming with animation with nice stagger effect. All the animation you can actually control right here. So there is animation and you can open the animation panel and you can see that there is like fade in, slide in, scale in, and you can select whether it's section all or hero only. And in this scenario, section all, elements all means all the elements gonna be animated on scroll. Okay, I don't think we need any other adjustment for this page. Let's keep building. Back to all pages and continue building. This all looking good to me. Right now we are in Designer. And first thing, let's open Style Guide. And in Style Guide we see that this website was built with FlowKit. When we preview website, now the link is accessible for us and we can open and there is a documentation for FlowKit. Of course you can go and read all the documentation, but if you don't want to, this video is just for you. Okay, let's go. FlowKit is CSS framework that was designed specifically for sites that are AI generated inside of Webflow. And in this video, I'm going to cover 3 main pillars of this framework: foundation, layouts, and blocks. Blocks are building blocks. In foundation, we're going to cover naming convention, class types, and units. So let's start with the first one. To understand naming convention in FlowKit, you just need to know 2 things. You need to know about underscores and hyphens and when are they used. So underscores, as you can see, they used to divide main part from second part. Underscores designed to separate property from its value. Grid is a property and 5 columns is the value. And in this example, card is component and body is a part. This is second use case for underscores. And underscores always used on the main classes. There is combo classes like mobile to columns, and when you read all of this name, you can understand what's going on. So there is a grid with 5 columns and on mobile it will become 2 columns. Hyphen is simply used to connect words with single concept. For example, there is a rich text. So hyphen was used just to separate the words. For example, here is secondary. Instead of using space here, we're using hyphen. And also hyphens are used for this kind of type of prefixes, like is. Is indicator of the combo class. So whenever you see is, it means it will change the main class. So you would say like the button, and button is secondary. And you will never find in FlowKit combo class, which is modifier class, with underscore. So underscore will help you to identify utility classes. So here is another example. Margin top, none, on tablet. Here is another use case for underscores. Margin top is the property, and we can see that none is the value of this property, and tablet is a breakpoint. So what all of this means, it means that the element with this class will get margin top none only on tablet, but on desktop it's gonna be default value. In FlowKit there is 4 types of classes: components, combo classes, utility classes, and responsive modifiers. We're going to cover all of them. Let's start with components. Components are very use case based classes, and the way they're structured is there is a component, for example, as a card. This is a main component class. And then if you have any parts of this main class, you would see component part. For example, card body, component part subpart. If you would have something else, for example, card header, and then you would have icon or something else, you would call it card header icon. We also have, for example, button, and if you have icon inside of the button, you would call it button icon. Let's check how it looks on our build. So for example, let's look at card. When we click here and we go one level up, we can see there is a card, and this card contains card body, and it has all other elements inside. These two, they always comes together, card and card body. This is component class. Another type is combo class. Combo class is needed to change the main class, for example button, and make it look different. You change the behavior of the main class adding combo class. You will change card on inverse. This will change background. Grid to columns, gap small. Gap small will just add another gap for grid to columns. Text horizontal, on mobile it will become vertical. So there is just 4 prefixes that you should be aware of. One is, and this change behavior. One is on, and this will change how this class will look differently on different backgrounds. And if you're using modes, this might be soon deprecated. So there is a grid to columns, and for all the grids, for all the components that are using groups, and for all the flex layouts, gap is used to set the distance between child elements. So is on gap, and we also have responsive modifiers like this mobile, or in this scenario this is mobile landscape, and another one is tablet. So whenever you want to change behavior of the main component on different resolutions, you would just use this formula. And let's check example. For example, we have button, and we have button is secondary. So this button has button class, and this one button is secondary. There is a special controls exist in AI site builder. So let me show what I mean. When you're just using swept style button here, all the classes are getting applied to elements by default. If I switch to inverse, this button will get a class button on inverse, and the section will get a class section is inverse. Those classes are auto applied if you're just using swept style button, and quite soon it might change. But just for you to know what are auto applied combo classes are, those are applied automatically by AI site builder, so you don't need to worry about them at all. And there is a third class, utilities. Utilities are single-purpose classes that helps to set some styles to elements. For example, you could say display none or display block, or you could hide on tablet or mobile some of the elements. And there is also sizing classes, and you can also set positions. And there is more utility classes are used on the framework. For example, you could set different effects, and those effects are radius size if you want to set radius, and you could select between small and X large. So in the framework, it's mostly using t-shirt sizes. Whenever you search for different values, you can always type for radius and then type between small, medium, large, X large. You can also set different shadow sizes, overflow, which controls the fit of the content inside of the main wrapper, and there is also like colors where you can change background and you can change text color as well. And the last one, responsive modifiers. Responsive modifiers are used to change the behavior of the main class on different resolutions, for example, on tablet or mobile landscape or mobile, and it will do something different. Let's say we have here grid 2 column, but what if we make it grid 5 column and we go to tablet, and on tablet we see it's set to 3, but what if we want to be 1? So we select tablet 1 column and it's going to be tablet 1 column. So we change the behavior of the main class on different resolutions. And to avoid any confusion, let's actually understand two concepts here. So there is a utility postfix and combo prefix. What does it mean? If you want to set specific property only on mobile, but on desktop is gonna be different, you would set it even on main class, and you would say that text align center gonna be applied on mobile, but on tablet this is default. And another one is you want to change something from the main class. So the main class has its own behavior and you want to change this behavior on different resolutions. So in this scenario, grid 4 columns has 2 columns for tablet, but you want to change it to be 1 column. So this is what it's used for. And now we're going to cover units. FlowKit is using units very use case based. For example, for most scenarios, root relative sizing is used. And root relative sizing, accessibility friendly, it will scale if you scale the page, and the size is tied to HTML font size. So it's used primarily for gaps, margins, paddings, and they scale with the base size. For example, padding top medium, gap small, they all using rems. EM is element relative sizing. What it means, for example, you have a heading, margin bottom 1 EM, and doesn't matter how big or small your text element, if you set 1 EM, it means the larger the element, the larger gonna be gap. The smaller the element, the smaller gonna be gap. Same for buttons. If you scale your button and you make it larger and larger, all the spaces will scale with proportions, with the equal proportions. So this is very usable for text-based elements and for buttons. Pixels actually used only for 2 use cases. One is for borders on cards, for example, and another one for dividers. This is where you want this precision of being just 1 pixel or 2 pixels and border be with just like 1 pixel. Percentages are used for heights, for min height, for width, to set the width of the element, to set the width of container or section. These are dynamic units. Viewport height, dynamic viewport height, viewport width, they mostly are used for sections to define height or width. It's very useful when the element must take the full height of the screen, for example. Another one which is very powerful, this is container query width. So in this particular example, we have heading responsive wrapper. This will define, and this is gonna be our parent element, which will set the base, and the size of the heading responsive will be relative to heading responsive wrapper. I will cover this just a bit later when we will start talking about headings. Okay, sweet, now we're going to cover layouts. Layouts have page structure, spacing, grid, flags, and overlays. And we will start with the page structure. In all of the AI generated sites, they're all following the same exact layout. On the top, you will always have navigation, then you would have a section, and inside of the section you have container, and then you have footer. Let's check how it looks on the build. And for this, we'll just collapse everything, and we see there is a body, there is a navigation, and here is a footer. And now we just open one section, and in this section we have section and container, and in this container we have content that is inside of this container. And all other sections, they following absolutely the same structure. So there is a section container, and in this container you have elements inside. Same here and same for all other sections. Sections and containers, they have their own combo classes that will change the behavior of the main class section. For example, if you set on section is full screen, it will set min height to 100 dph. This is going to be the section that will take full screen size, like this. Now we have a section is secondary, is inverse, accent primary, and all of this. So this will change the background of the section. As you can see, the section is just normal section. This is default mode. Now, if we click one button, this is gonna be our secondary section. Now it's getting secondary and it gets different background. Now, if we click one more time, we see that this section is accent primary. So our accent primary is set to blue, and the section getting is accent primary class. This is how it works. To change the width of the container, you would just use one of the combo classes that you can see here. So as an example, let's go to this section, we find container, and we say is max. So this will scale the content to fit the full width of the site. Now, if we change to is small, this will make this container smaller. Very big topic, spacing. And the spacing in FlowKit is content-based. What does it mean? It does mean that all the headings, paragraph, eyebrow, subheadings, they have its own spacing. So whenever you add class like heading primary, you don't need to worry about margin or distance to another element. Or if you see the paragraph, it always have its own spacing to another element, and eyebrow and subheading. Same comes with groups. Any groups like icon, button, or tag, they all use different margins and spacing between elements, and same for components. Section, container, header, card body, those are all using special spacing, and let's check how it actually works. So here we go and we see that heading hero got its own variable for margin bottom. So if we open this panel and we check, it's set to 0.3 EM. Now if we check this subheading also got its own margin bottom. So this makes sure that the spacing after those elements always consistent. And in this example, button group, it got its own spacing for margin top, and it also has spacing for gap. So gap is set to 1 rem and spacing here is set to 1.5 rem. Another example is card. When we click on card body, the card padding for card is set to its own variable. So, and if we check this variable, we see that this is 2 rems. And here's a good example how use case based spacing works. For example, eyebrow got its own margin here in EMs, and heading primary got its own margin in EMs. Subheading also got its own margin bottom, and the paddings will also get its own spacing between elements and margin top. And the header, this component, it got its own margin bottom. You never need to guess which kind of sizing you need to set between elements because it's always related to the element itself. And now let's close the gap for knowing what is gap. Gap is the combo class with this prefix, gap hyphen, and then you can choose one of the values, none, x small, and all of them. And for grid, in FlowKit, grid got columns from 1 to 6 and then 9 and 12. So when you're using grid together with a gap, you get different gaps. Same comes with flex, and flex you have different flows. One is vertical and another one is horizontal, and then you can set different gaps as well. And same for element groups. Those are icon, button, and tag. So let's check on example how it works. For example, we have flex horizontal here, and we can set different gaps. Gap large, we can set gap small or x small. Or if we go to grid, we have grid 3 column and we could set gap large. Group elements are buttons. For example, we have this button group, and if we want to set another gap here, we would make gap large. Another concept of spacing is margin and padding. If you don't know what is margin and what is padding, so here is our element, and this element we have space to inside of the element to the content which is inside of our element, and we have outer space, which is margin, to other objects that might be on a page, so this calls margin. Margin and paddings, they always have direction, top, right, bottom, left. if you don't specify direction, it's going to be applied to all of the sides. And to know all of the possible combination of margin and padding, the only thing that you need to understand is there is a margin, there is a padding, there is a side, which is top right, bottom left. And for the margin, it also got vertical or horizontal, or you could not specify any directions and you can just keep it. So you will get just margin and size, and this will be applied to all the sides. Same for padding. For padding, you also get top right, bottom left, vertical and horizontal, and you get the values from none to x large. For margin, the only difference is that you also get auto. And auto will help you to center elements in the screen if you apply it to the section, for example, or if you want to push the element to the bottom or top, you will apply margin top or margin bottom auto. But this auto concept will not work for padding. So let's check where padding auto is used. For example, let's check this element icon. If I add margin horizontal auto to this element, it will set auto to left and right, and the icon will be aligned center. And another example, let's just go to grid to columns. Let's remove this class, and now we go to header. We can see that it's taking the full height. But what if I just want to move everything to the bottom? One of the options is to set margin top auto, and it will push this element down to its container. And utility sizing is interesting because there are scenarios where sometimes you just want to add padding like on section or like on container or maybe as on a card, but you don't want to use the section class and you just want to use padding for it. So you would use for this padding section. As an example, if I would just go here and for this header I would say padding section, this will apply padding on top and bottom the same as on the section. And I already showed you how to use margin horizontal auto, margin top auto, and you can also set margin top none on tablet or mobile. This is usable when you want to set specific behavior on different resolutions. Okay, as we're done with spacing, now let's cover layouts. And one of the most powerful layouts inside of Webflow, grid. In FlowKit, we have 8 main classes. Grid 1 to column, 2, 6 columns, and then we also have 9 columns and 12 columns. And every of this grid class got its own default behavior on different resolutions. For example, grid 4 columns is going to be 4 on desktop, on tablet is going to be 2, and then on mobile, landscape and portrait is going to be 1. And if you look at grid 12 columns, it's going to have 3 on tablet, it's going to have 2 on mobile landscape and 1 on mobile portrait. This is based on the most used behavior. But if you want to override this behavior, sometimes you want to set something different and you want to set grid 3 columns instead of being 3 on tablet, you want to have it just 1. And here's an example. Let's find something where we have 3 columns. Here is a grid 3 column. So if we go to tablet, we can see that this grid still has grid 3 columns. So what we want to do is we want to set tablet 1 column, and this will set just 1 column for this grid. So this will override the default behavior of grid 3 column class. Grid alignments will help to control child elements of the grid. So there is a grid element with any number of columns, and you can set is the prefix, and then you would say x center, y center. So x and y are axes, and you would set whether you want the elements to be center aligned or top aligned or bottom aligned. We have this container section, and now we find grid 2 columns, and we want to say is y center. So this will center align the child elements inside of the grid. And this might look a bit complicated, but actually it's very simple. So you have this grid and you can select between different columns, and then you can specify how it behaves on different resolutions. So for example, tablet could be mobile or mobile landscape, and then you set different columns, and you can also align elements inside of the grid, and then you can specify the gaps. In a lot of cases, you will not even need these two, or you might not need gap, and you would just use grid 3 columns and the default behavior gonna be good for you. But if you want to override, so this is the correct formula to actually do it. Grid item manual is very interesting concept, and it's mainly used on bento grids. It's solving one specific problem. In Webflow, whenever you change spans for the element inside of the grid, it will always add this ID. So this property, it's not tied to the class, but it's tied to this particular element. So if you want your elements inside the grid to be swappable, so you want to change, for example, card to image, you just want to place your card inside of the element. So the solution is to add grid item manual class and then change how many columns this class will take in the grid. And then inside of this element, now you can place any other elements. It will help a lot when you want to change image, for example, to the card. So let's check how does it look. If we go, for example, here, we can see that grid item manual doesn't have any styles except the position, and column span is set to. Let's take this card, find grid item manual, we placed our image here, and we would delete the card. So now this image is taking the width of the grid item manual. But what would happen if we would use it without? So we would just place this image right here, and this will break the layout completely here, because it's already set to 1, this set to 2, so it's gonna be difficult to understand what's going on. But if you just follow this idea that there is a grid item manual and you just place content inside of those elements, this is how we make sure that the layout is not broken. The next one is very powerful, is flex layouts. Flex can be flex horizontal or vertical, and flex horizontal has its own combo class is wrap. So what it means, when you have a stack of elements and you have wrap and the element doesn't fit into one row, it will just go to another row. There's also classes for flex children elements, nested elements inside of the flex grid. Those are flex child expand, flex child no shrink. This will help to set the correct behavior for the child elements of the flex horizontal. And also alignments. Alignments are combo classes on top of main class flex horizontal. So it would set different alignment, vertical, horizontal, or sometimes even both. And here is the exact formula how would you use it. Let's say you have a flex horizontal or vertical, and then you have is X center or is Y center. In this scenario, you can just set is center because you want to align by two axes, X and Y. And then let's say you want to change flex horizontal to vertical on mobile landscape. This is how would you use it. And in FlowKit, there is more available options for changing default behavior on different breakpoints. Another interesting layout is overlay. Overlay is used when you want to have your background image or video or illustration to be on the back, and then you want on the foreground, you want your content here. In FlowKit, there is two strategies for this. One strategy is you simply add overlay class, and then you put all the elements that you want inside of the overlay. So let's check this on example. Let's say we have this section, and we can even take this image, and we have this container, and now we just want to have div with overlay, and we paste the image inside. And now we have the image behind the text. And if you want to add, for example, overlay on top of the image to make it more dim, you can make another image, and then you would say overlay opacity middle, and this will create overlay that will create overlay image less visible and the text more readable. The second strategy is grid layout. For the grid layout, you would need additional div, which is hero or hero overlay, if you want to invert text and colors. And then you would add two additional divs. One is hero back and hero front. This strategy actually is very good when you don't know whether the content is going to be bigger or image is going to be bigger. And here is how it works. We have our content and we want to wrap it inside of two divs. And one div is going to be hero, and we have another div which is hero front. Now we want to put hero back instead of overlay. And on a section level, we just want to remove all the paddings. So we say padding none. So what happens now is the image is setting the height of the content. And now what happens if we just duplicate a lot of times our heading? This will scale the image. So this strategy will always ensure that whenever you have image which is bigger than content or content bigger than image, it would always look good. Okay, now blocks. Blocks is the huge part of the FlowKit. Blocks contains typography, primitives, and components. And there is a very good example which will explain typography, primitives, and components all together and how they tie it. This is header component. In this header component, we have typography, and typography is heading, subheading, or this list items. And then we have primitives, and primitives are like icons, single buttons, and then we have component, and the component is assembled header that contains all of this together. Or for example, this button group, it is also a component that you can just place anywhere on your page. And let's start with typography. First, we look into headings. In FlowKit, typography or headings divided into two groups. One is define the hierarchy of the elements on the page, and they used for SEO. And another one is the styling of the headings. So they are separated. They separated for the reason because in a lot of cases, the H1 is not always the biggest one element on the page. So to make it clear, H1 is used for setting the hierarchy, semantic hierarchy on the page, and the class is setting the style on the page. So you could have main heading on the page, but it's gonna look smaller than another heading on the page. So this is a heading with H2 tag. So this is secondary one because we already have H1 here. So what if we want to make this heading smaller and we set heading small? So it's gonna be really small, but it's still H1. So this is still primary semantically, and this one is bigger one. And here we could say heading hero is gonna be even bigger. And another concept is responsive headings. They require heading responsive wrapper. The heading that is inside of this wrapper will relate to the size of the section where the heading actually is. Let's make this heading responsive large. So it's gonna be huge, right? Now what we wanna do is we wanna set this container to heading responsive wrapper. So before, this heading responsive larger was relative to the full page, and now it's relative to this container. And now what happens if we just place it inside of the cart body? So it's also gonna be large. But what if we set on cart body heading responsive wrapper? Now this heading is smaller. So if I take it and move it here, it's larger. And if I put it on a section level, it's huge. So it always fill the parent element size. Very powerful. In body text, we have paragraph with different sizes: paragraph large, small x large, and XX large. And as well, eyebrow, label, and subheading. For example, we have this heading, and subheading is always following after the heading, of course. So it has not only the size, but also it's got color, it got maximum width, and its own margin. And let's also check how paragraph works. So if we click here and we set paragraph large, this will set the paragraph to large and paragraph X large or double X large. Now we're moving to primitives, icons, images, and other elements. Let's start with buttons. For buttons, we have sizes, variants, and parts. In sizes, you can change it to small or large. For style variants, it might be is secondary, and parts of the buttons are button label, button icon. And buttons always are inside of the button group. In this card, we see there is a button group. And if I would say button is aligned center, it's gonna be aligned center. And if I would say is aligned right, it's gonna be aligned right. So what do I wanna add? Instead of just text button, we want to add another one. we want to make this as a button. So let's get a button, and then button is secondary, got another style here. And what if we just want to add more gap between elements? We would say gap, for example, small. This will increase the distance between two buttons. So what do I want to make for the button group? Make it vertical stretch. This is how it's gonna look like. And then if we make another button and we make it is primary, and then we'll just remove this button, so we can get this type of layout on the card. FlowKit comes with animation packs, and animation packs, they are awesome because they add some nice intro animation for buttons, for links, for text, but it also comes with a tiny downside. If intro animation happens and user will hover over different elements, those elements might just flash on a page and it will not look really good. To solve the problem, FlowKit got IX link wrapper that actually isolates the animation from hover states. If we go to the build, we can see that every button here is wrapped into additional wrapper, which is IX link wrapper. So all the animation here on the panel is tied to IX link wrapper and not to the button. So on hover, we can see that hover animation happens and the intro animation will happen as well. And now on hover, there is no clashes at all. Icon is another primitive that also comes with the wrapper, and the wrapper is icon group. Same as button group, you can put the icons inside of the group and all the spacing between icons gonna be defined. Same as margins and paddings. If you have this icon, we can add another wrapper and we could say icon group. And now if we just duplicate the icon a couple of times, we see that it's nicely distributed in one row, it's got its own gap, so it works as it should. And now let's check different styles of the icon. So here we have icon with background and size large. I can remove size, I can remove is background, and this is gonna be just icon. And I can set another size, and then I can say is background. So it's quite intuitive, as you can see. In FlowKit, image is not just image tag, it also gets its own wrapper, which will set image ratio. So you could have image ratio auto or other ratios, and we will talk about this just in a second. But what is important to know that on the image tag, you can set image color or image contain. And this will define how the image behaves to its wrapper. So whether it's fill the wrapper or the wrapper fill the image. Okay, now let's look at different image ratios. So image ratios comes with all of these different values. So it could be square as this one, or you can make it as a portrait if you choose this one, or it could be just auto, and this would set the ratio of the image itself. Auto will just understand the ratio of the image itself, and you can also override it on different resolutions. If we go to image ratio and we want to change it to something different, we could simply type image ratio to the 3, or we could type image 3:2, and it's going to give us different aspect ratios for images. Okay, now let's check how the form works. We have form fields, which are input, checkbox, and radio, and they work inside of this structure. So we have form block, inside we have form, and inside of the form is a 12-column grid. So every item can be form item, which takes full width and it spans to 12 columns. It could be half, and this is span of 6 columns. It could be third, so it spans across 4 columns. And inside you can have input label and input field. And then we have another form item with the button. Let's check how does it look. Here is our form. The form is 12-column grid. And now every item inside of this grid has its own class. So if I remove half, it takes full width. If I bring half back, it's going to be half. And now we have form item, and inside of this form item, we have button group. And let's also check other classes, like this is input field, and there is input label, and here is input item. Input item is a combination of label and input field. So if you want to just duplicate, you can just take input item and make more of them. And then if you might want to make it half, you can make it half and then you have 2 items in one row. Tag, which also comes with a group, you can have horizontal or make it vertical, and then you put many tags, as many as you want. We also have avatar. You can make it small, you can make it large. And for avatar, there is also special classes for the text, after name and author info. And there is also divider. Divider can be horizontal or vertical. And for divider, if you want to change the style, you can make it accent or secondary. And finally, we got to full assembled components. And components are, for example, this header. This header is the entire component. Header component consists from wrapper, eyebrow, heading primary, subheading, and button groups. And you can add more elements like this, for example, between those elements. But this is the base. Header component also have this combo class isAlign center. Here is a classic header example. We have heading, subheading, and button group. And if we want to align this header center, we would say isAlign center. Now it's align center. Another powerful component is card, and it could be card or card link. Card link is just made for clickable cards, and inside you can place image with different ratios, and here you can just put any elements that you want. For example, eyebrow, heading secondary, paragraph, button group. So all of this is right here. They all goes inside of card body, and card body makes sure there is a padding inside. And card could have different styles. It could be secondary, inverse, and primary. It will change background of the card and all the colors inside. Card body also got its own combo classes. Here is a card. There is a card body, and if I want to change alignment here, I will just add isAlign center. So this will change alignment of the elements inside. Now if I go one step up, this is card link, and if I want to add another style, I would just add class isInvert here. Content block is pretty much the same as card, but it doesn't have attributes of the card. So it doesn't have border around, and it also doesn't have padding around elements. So let's transform this card into content block. And I want to make it convert to div. Now we also don't need card body here, and we want to turn this card into content block. So content block simply has flags with direction vertical and width, and it's set index 1. So content block simply container for the content inside of the block. So this is what it is. And if you need align elements inside, you can also set isAlign center. So this is how it's gonna look like. Okay, 2 more components, navigation and footer. They both have their own wrappers, nav and footer. So we have nav container, which is setting the max width and all the paddings. We also have inside navigation left, navigation center, and navigation right. So if, for example, we would move navigation center inside of navigation left, we would get this type of navigation. If we moved navigation center into nav right, we would get this type of layout for the navigation. And footer following the same idea. You have a footer as a wrapper, and then you have container, and then you might have footer bottom with copyrights, and then footer icon group, and other footer elements as well. Inside of the slider, you have slider mask. This mask contains all the items inside, and it also defines how many items gonna be sliced inside. So you have combo class is slide 1, 2, 5 slides. So you can decide how many slides should be sliding inside of the mask. And you could set is slide gap, and this will add the gap between slides, and it will make sure that the gap is consistent and there is no overlaps anywhere. And inside of the slider slide, this is where you put your content, and the content could be image, could be card, could be anything that you want to slide inside of the slider. So there is 2 concepts. One concept is show tree and slide tree, and this is how you would do it. We have here slider mask. On the slider mask we have is 3 slides, slide 1. What does it mean? We click preview, and when we click just one button, it will slide just 1 slide per click. Now we go back, and what we wanted to update is we want to check is slide 3 slides, okay? And we add is slide gap. When we preview the page, and we click next, it will slide 3 slides instead of just 1. I don't have tabs on my current build, but this following the same structure as all the tabs. There is a tabs nav, and if you want to make navigation on tabs align center, this is how would you use it. You would just add a combo class, and then you have tabs content, and you can put any content inside of tab content. In FlowKit, there is also different variations of the buttons for navigation. For example, if you want tab menu button to be plain, you would just put it here. Or if you want your tab menu link be transparent and in the bottom, you would just use this class over here. Accordion. Чё последний? 2 часа записываю. And the last component that we're going to cover is accordion. Accordion will help to build sections like FAQ, for example. It got this wrapper accordion, and there is accordion toggle, and you might have accordion icon component, which is this one, and accordion content goes inside. So we have set of accordions. Now this is the accordion main class. Here is a toggle, here is accordion icon, and here is accordion content. And if we expand, we simply show all the content is inside of accordion content. I hope this video helped you to understand what the FlowKit is and how it works. FlowKit is official Webflow framework, but it's young and everything is moving so fast, especially now with AI, and it's evolving. Webflow evolving, and FlowKit will evolve as well. So there are gonna be new versions quite soon, and you will see them. So stay tuned and keep building awesome websites on Webflow.